Imagine a world where one of the greatest musical minds ever known dies under mysterious circumstances, haunted by poverty and illness. Why did Mozart, a prodigious genius recognized from childhood, face such a tragic end? This is the story of Wolfgang Mozart, the child prodigy who created some of the most iconic masterpieces, only to die without realizing his impact on the world. Born to Leopold Mozart and Anna Maria, Mozart was the youngest child of his 7 siblings. His father, Leopold, was a composer of the Imperial Free City of the Holy Roman Empire, and his mother, Anna, was a housewife who nearly lost her life giving birth due to placental complications. From a young age, Mozart was recognized as a musical genius by his father, Leopold. When his sister Narnell was 7 years old, she began keyboard lessons with their father. Mozart would try his best to imitate his sister. Narnell later recounted the moment, saying, quote, "He often spent much time at the clavier picking out thirds, which he was ever striking, and his pleasure showed that it sounded good." End quote. When he was 4 years old, he started playing the piano after learning it in just 30 minutes. At age 5, he wrote his first piece of music in his father's book, Narnell Nottenbach. He also learned to play the harpsichord, violin, and the organ. Even his sister was surprised by her genius brother, stating, quote, "In the 4th year of his age, his father, for a game as it were, began to teach him a few minutes and pieces at the clavier. He could play it faultlessly and with the greatest delicacy, and keeping exactly in time. At the age of 5, he was already composing little pieces, which he played to his father, who wrote them down." End quote. Even though Mozart was blessed with a genius mind, he was severely malnourished. His mother avoided breastfeeding and only gave him water, which weakened his immune system badly, something that he would suffer from later on in his life. Initially, he got struck with scarlet fever, which damaged both of his kidneys, and it didn't just stop there. After recovering from scarlet fever, Mozart then got hit with strep throat, which took a toll on his already fragile body. However, perhaps the biggest challenge was when Mozart contracted smallpox. This disease was often considered a death sentence back then, as there were no treatments for it. Yet, somehow, he managed to survive and was ready to take over the world with his musical talent. As a young prodigy, Mozart had many opportunities to meet the best of the musical world. One such opportunity was meeting Johann Christian Bach, who was regarded as one of the most influential composers of his time. They met and interacted during his London visit, which left a considerable mark on Mozart's life and his compositions. On top of that, the journey also created a deep passion for opera in his heart. A noticeable example is when he saw the performance of Gluck's Alceste opera in Vienna in 1767. Seeing Gluck's innovative approach encouraged Mozart to create his musical pieces based on his style in some of the earliest operas, like Mitridate and Lucio Silla. However, the relationship between Mozart and his father was slowly falling apart, as he started to turn rebellious towards his controlling father. His father, Leopold, was no ordinary man. He was a skilled musician and professional violinist who became famous after publishing a groundbreaking book on playing the violin, which made him an overnight celebrity. Seeing his son's amazing talent, Leopold saw an opportunity. He took Mozart on extensive tours of European courts, proudly presenting himself as a remarkable child prodigy, which made him a lot of money. However, Leopold's approach to raising his children was rigorous and demanding. He was a harsh disciplinarian, pushing Mozart to keep practicing relentlessly until he hit his limits. His influence over his son didn't end there, and continued even after he became an adult. He tightly controlled all his decisions, and even sent Mozart to Paris to stop his relationship with Aloysia Weber, whom Mozart started to fall in love with. Tragically, during that trip to Paris, Mozart's mother, Anna Maria, suddenly fell ill and died. Leopold blamed his son for his mother's death, saying it was Mozart's fault for making her travel there. Writing to Mozart, he stated, quote, "She was fated to sacrifice herself for her son." End quote. To make matters worse, Mozart asked Aloysia for her hand, but she promptly rejected him. The tragic blow of his mother's death, along with the rejection from Aloysia, left deep scars on Mozart's heart that would continue to impact his personal life. However, Mozart's life took a turn when he chose to distance himself from his father and even attempted to persuade his sister to do the same. Despite his efforts, Narnell declined to leave, holding her father in high regard. So, after failing to win Aloysia's hand, Mozart turned his attention to Aloysia's younger sister, Constance. But things weren't smooth for the couple, as they often fought each other. Eventually, they went on to have a fallout after Constance allowed another man to measure her calves in a parlor game, angering Mozart. Nevertheless, the couple soon reconciled and promised to marry soon. However, a significant obstacle began to emerge. Mozart struggled to gain his strict father's approval for their marriage. Tensions escalated as the wedding day neared. In an era when cohabitation was severely frowned upon, Constance and Mozart faced accusations of violating societal norms. Constance's sister even threatened to involve the police if Constance did not return home. In response, Mozart wrote to Baroness von Waldstaaten, stating, quote, "Can the police here enter anyone's house in this way? Perhaps it's only a ruse of Madame Weber to get her daughter back. If not, I know no better remedy than to marry Constance tomorrow morning or, if possible, today." End quote. Finally, the couple tied the knot on August 4th of 1782 at St. Stephen's Cathedral and went on to have 6 children, only 2 of whom survived to infancy. However, things were looking bleak for Mozart in his professional life, as he had fallen out of favor with the aristocracy. Well, it was not that they started disliking Mozart's work. Instead, it was due to the Austro-Turkish War. Since they were the biggest patrons of his music, Mozart was hit with a huge financial blow, as the war had already taken a toll on the economy, leaving the noble class with less money to support musicians like him. As a result, Mozart's income declined dramatically and at one point dropped by 66%. So, Mozart had no other option but to move his family to a more affordable suburb of the Alsergrund. He began heavily relying on loans from friends, especially from his Freemason friend Michael von Puchberg. Experts speculate that the financial pressures were so high that Mozart was potentially suffering from depression during this period. The death of the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II was also a massive blow to his financial situation. Already desperate for money, Mozart now found himself at the mercy of Joseph's successor, Leopold II. However, fate would soon hand Mozart an unexpected opportunity from none other than his arch-rival, Antonio Salieri. Just like Mozart, Salieri was a well-respected Italian composer who played a pivotal role in the development of the late 18th century opera. He also taught several legendary composers, including Beethoven and Liszt, as well as Franz Xavier Wolfgang Mozart, who was Mozart's son. When the idea to commemorate Leopold's coronation with a new opera was commissioned, the first choice to write it was Antonio Salieri. Surprisingly, he turned down the offer, which made Mozart the default option to go with. Mozart was conflicted about what to do with the gig, as the emperor already disliked him due to his associations with the Freemasons, and on top of that, he cannot refuse such a prestigious offer from the royalty after all. Nonetheless, Mozart decided to take the gig and set to work on the La Clemencia di Tito. But the premiere of the opera was a complete disaster. The attendees described the performance as very boring and so bad that almost all of us went to sleep. This made Mozart embarrassed of his own work and called it a failure. But the most tragic part is that the opera, which was regarded as one of his worst works, ended up being one of the classic works after his death. Mozart was unshaken, and it was during this time that he created some of his most iconic masterpieces, which included the opera Così fan tutte and the world-famous The Magic Flute, which enjoyed tremendous public success. Slowly, his financial problems started to recover after his wealthy supporters in Hungary and Amsterdam decided to become patrons of his musical compositions. He further supplemented his income by writing dance music as an imperial chamber composer, but it was already too late. During his final years, Mozart started to face frequent health problems, just like when he was a child. It began with high fever and rashes, but soon he was bedridden after conducting the premiere of The Magic Flute, which was also his last work. Day by day, he was getting paranoid and started to worry that someone had poisoned him. Even though his physical health was deteriorating, he was determined to finish his Requiem, his final masterpiece. But sadly, Mozart passed away in his sleep after briefly falling into a coma. He was 35 at the time of his death. Many didn't believe that Mozart had actually passed away, and people started getting suspicious about whether the death was natural or a murder. This was further fueled by a Berlin newspaper which began to spread rumors that Mozart was actually poisoned by Antonio Salieri, who was publicly considered as Mozart's greatest enemy. The newspaper further claimed that Salieri had admitted to poisoning Mozart, motivated by envy of Mozart's exceptional talent. After a few years, the story reached Russia and was written into a play by the famous writer Alexander Pushkin, Mozart and Salieri. Followed by that, another Russian composer, Rimsky-Korsakov, turned Pushkin's play into an opera, which made Salieri's act famous. The final nail in the coffin was when the plot became even more widespread in the 1979 play Amadeus and the movie based on it, tarnishing Salieri's character as the man who tried to destroy both Mozart's career and his life. But the reality was far from the truth, and even modern medical analysis tells a different story. Throughout his adult life, Mozart was plagued by chronic health problems, from frequent fevers, exhaustion, and respiratory infections to bouts of yellow fever. Not to forget his relentless work ethic, which only made his health from better to worse as he had to take multiple gigs to provide for his family. So, the poisoning of Mozart was nothing close to the truth. It only destroyed Salieri's reputation. Mozart was considered an eccentric figure by many, as evident from his letters to close family and friends. To better understand his mental state, psychiatrists began analyzing various sources, including his personal writings and musical compositions. This analysis revealed a complex picture of musical genius. From his letters to his family, it's revealed that Mozart had a liking for making scatological jokes, particularly about his cousin Maria Anna Thekla Mozart. At times, he would show strange and weird facial expressions, which the psychiatrists speculate may be due to Tourette's syndrome, a rare neurological nervous disorder where the person makes sudden movements or sounds repeatedly. However, Mozart was able to mask his disorder most of the time due to his highly functioning brain, which prevented his personality from truly standing out in the crowd. But despite his status of once-in-a-generation composer, he was given a commoner's grave, to which George Bernard Shaw jokingly said, even his funeral was a failure. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more videos just like this.